In this lecture, we'll be covering functions and variables scope. First of all, let's start with functions. A function is a code block in JavaScript which gets called when some entity calls it. In JavaScript, we have following types of functions. Functions without any return value or any input arguments. Functions without any return value but with input arguments. Functions with return value as well as input arguments. And then we have anonymous functions. Anonymous functions are functions without any names. We'll be taking a look at code examples now to better understand these types of functions in JavaScript. So here's a function. To declare a function, we make use of a keyword called function. Then with the space, we give the name of that function. For instance, over here we have a function called hello world, and now you can see that we have an empty parenthesis. That is, it's not accepting any parameters, neither it's returning anything. It's simply writing in the document.write, that is the browser. So here we have hello world function. Now let's go ahead and see the other types of functions as well. Over here we have another function called greet users, which is taking two parameters, greeting and username, and it's returning by concatenating the greeting with a space and then the username. We have a function which is accepting some input arguments as well as returning something back. Now here we have another function called print greeting. Over here is just taking the input arguments but not returning anything. You can see that it's simply writing in the browser. So these are the three kind of functions that we talked about. Now let's go ahead and see anonymous function. Here we have created an object called person, and then we are associating a variable called greet, or a property you can say. So here we have person.greet, and then you can see that we have a function coming up which is being assigned to this greet property, and you can see that we don't have any name given to it. Here we have just the function and then the parameters that this function is accepting, and you can see that we don't have any name, and that's the reason why we call it as anonymous function. And all it's doing is returning greeting plus the username. And the way we call anonymous functions is this. So we are saying person.greet, and then we simply pass the parameters that it's expecting, and after that it will simply log the result out in the console. So let's save this and see it in action now. So here you can see that it's coming as hello Matt for the first function that we have over here, that's greet users. But this anonymous function that we just now talked about, here is the result for that, hello John. So this is how we create functions in JavaScript. Now let's go ahead and talk about variable scope. Whenever we declare a variable using the var keyword within a JavaScript function, it becomes local and can only be accessed from within that function. So here we have this var num, but if I declare this var num inside a function like this, in this function greet users, now this num becomes local to this function called greet users, and it can be accessed within this function only. And for this reason we can have similar variables in different functions. So here I have declared var num as 10. I have another function called print greeting, and there also I have var num as 10. I can make it 20, but that's not going to impact the num variable declared inside the greet users function. The reason why, because local variables are only recognized by the function in which they are declared. Local variables are deleted as soon as the function is completed. The scope of local variables is only within the function in which it's defined. Now let's talk about global variables. Here we have declared a variable called num as 10, which is a global variable. That is, variables which are declared outside a function becomes global, and all scripts and functions on the web page can access it. So if I declare a function over here, let's call it sample, and here I go ahead and say console.log and then simply say num. Now as you can see, we don't have any num variable declared inside the function sample, But when I'm writing this line, console.log num, the num variable which is defined in the global scope will be accessed and shown here. Let's change its value to 15 and save this, and now run this in browser. So here you can see the value 15 coming up, and that's possible because num is a global variable over here. So that was all about functions and variables scope in JavaScript. In upcoming lectures we'll be covering closures,